Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for watching our shorts program on home and family. Today, I have the lovely filmmakers with us, and so I'll throw to each one of you to introduce yourself as well as your film. Don't all go at once.
I'll go. Hey, I'm Samir Malal. I'm the writer-director of Vest.
I'm Allison Duke. I'm the director and co-writer of Promise Me and co-founder of Oya Media Group.
Hi, this is Alice Shin. I'm a director and writer of Signal Fire.
I'm Daniel. I'm an Ethiopian filmmaker, now currently based in BC, Canada. Yeah, and that's about it.
So I would like to start with Allison. So I understand that this story, this film, is kind of based on a previous iteration of this story in a documentary. So I'm just curious about how the idea of the film came to you, and like a little bit more on, curious about more on the journey of this story.
Thank you very much for that question. I just love being a part of this festival, so I want to thank you for selecting Promise Me in the festival. It's always a pleasure to show work at Reelworld Film Festival. Yes, Promise Me is based on, or inspired by true events that happened in a documentary that I shot in 2007 called The Women I've Become. And that documentary was about 8 African and Caribbean women living with HIV in Toronto. And, the documentary was showing their resilience and also, just their trials and tribulations, trying to get services in the healthcare sector, and, just some of the other obstacles and oppressions that they faced being women living with HIV. So one of the women in this film, she had, her family was in contact with child welfare through the educational system. And this story is basically part of that journey that she faced. She passed away, and I was really, really upset about what had happened to her and her family. And I remember the night when she had that interaction with child welfare, she called me over to her house to talk to me about what had just happened. And she told me, no matter what you do, Allison, make sure everybody knows my story. You have to tell my story. And I've carried that story with me since 2007. And so, so I got an opportunity to go back to school. I studied, film production at York University, and did my MFA. And I thought this would be a great thesis film for me. And that's what I did with Promise Me.
Oh, excellent. I didn't know that you were a York MFA. I went to York. Woo! I went there for theater, though. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's also so beautiful to see how, I feel like at the center of all film, or great film, is empathy. And it just is a testament to you as a filmmaker, but also as a person, to take it upon yourself to share that person's story. Because I guess that's why we're all here. It's to share the stories of the marginalized, to share the experience of people who you don't think have experiences. So thank you, Allison. I'd like to move on to Samir. So one of the things that I loved about your film was every choice where the camera was so, it just felt intentional. And so specific. I loved some of the points in that movie where your characters are backlit. It's just beautiful and dreamy, and I just loved it. And so I guess as a director, I'm curious about your process from a technical standpoint. So where you start in pre-production, or were the actors really the center of the story with finding the boy and then everything built around him? And I'm just curious about your technical approach, because some of the lighting setups in that are spectacular. Oh, you're on mute.
Oops. No, thank you. Yeah, it's like the guy in my film. Can't talk. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for having me at the festival, and it's a great festival, and I'm just really honored to be at the festival, and thank you for watching the film. And yeah, that's a great question, because things were intentional, but I would also say that we arrived at that intention through an organic process. So, it was a kind of a combination of having a vision, an idea going in, but then of course bringing in the collaborators. So I worked with this amazing young DP who's Bradford Young's apprentice. So if you know Bradford Young, he shot
yeah.
Arrival, he shot Star Wars. Is one of the most sought after DPs in the world, and his style is very let's call it underlit, underexposed, using very minimal lighting. Literally one or two lights, avoiding film lights. Kind of in a Emmanuel Lubezki kind of style, but even more so. And so this DP, my DP, he Fraser Rigg is his name. He really sort of comes from that school in terms of lighting. And then I would say that it was really important to me as a commercial director to kind of work with actors and have a longer process to really involve the actors, kind of workshop the material, do a lot of rehearsals with them, and really discover where to put the camera through the organic process of discovering the blocking with the actors, the way you would maybe in a longer project. And that was really part of my intention. So a lot of those choices developed through that process.
It's just like you say, Brad, because I was thinking when I was watching it, I was like, okay, this is like, it reminds me of Villeneuve, like some of the, it reminded me of like Arrival, let's say, in some parts. So it's just interesting that you say that you're using Bradford Young's apprentice. But yeah, really stunning. Like, I feel like toward the end when he's falling asleep, there's like, you find a way to have like purple and yellow. And for anyone that's a color nerd like I am, like those are complementary colors in the color wheel. And you more often than not in film see blue and orange. So seeing purple and yellow, I was like, damn. So thank you so much. I'm just going to move on with Alice. I'm curious about what your favorite thing is, or your favorite choice that you've made in your film. One of the things that I loved was your use of text in a language that was not English. And it kind of punctuated moments for me. And I thought you did a very good job of using text on the screen and helping it tell the story in a way that was very unique. So I'm just curious about that facet of their filmmaking, but also just anything in general that like you really loved about your film, where you look back and you're like, yeah, I did that. So curious about that.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's actually one of my favorite sequences as well, the poem sequence. So there is a background story of this. Originally, this project was kind of gallery project in the city of Markham. The concept was selected 6 filmmakers will reflect the characteristic of city of Markham, and I was selected as one of 6 filmmakers. So I observed the city of Markham and realized almost 70% of populations were Asian, and especially Chinese Canadian were mainstream. So I already thought, okay, I'm gonna make some nostalgia feeling of film. And then I was thinking, probably many of Chinese Canadians sometimes have a communication problem, especially if they are first generation of immigration, right? So I was thinking, without like communication language, how can I make some relationship with people, or like, if we see just landscape or a little bit tiny moments, then sometimes we can feel like, oh, I'm kind of connected with this person. So that's what I wanted to use poem. But it's funny story because I was thinking of nostalgia, but I didn't know what should I use the Chinese poem, because technically I'm Korean and Korean language is different with Chinese. So, and at that time I was thinking, and then somehow I was driving to Chicago, and then somehow I realized, wait a minute, my husband's friend is living in Chicago and he is the expert scholar of Chinese literature. So I was in contact with him, and then he gave me Signal Fire, a poem. So, and then when I received that, I feel like, wow, this is perfect nostalgia feeling of poem. So let's use this. And then after that, the story is just coming out. And then I describe that insert shot and then poem sequences. But so that's one of my favorite sequence. And the one other favorite shot is actually caterpillar shot. And
Yes.
yeah, and there is another funny story because when I wrote my script, I was thinking of ant. So it was on the grave. So it's very makes sense if ant is walking around the grave, right?
Yeah.
And but when I put the ant over there, sorry, not put, like I just found the ant, but like very carefully and moved them to the on the grave. But they're so fast. So they're kind of, but my film is really silent and slow. But ant is so fast moving, so it distorts the mood. So I feel like, oh no, I cannot use ant. So I was a little bit panicking. How can I replace this ant to the other thing? Because I wanted to make one shot which characters were gonna feel some bonding relationship at that moment. But my cinematographer found caterpillar like coincidentally on that day. So we put caterpillar on the grave and he moves very, very slow. And that's very, very makes sense for filmmaking because caterpillar in Asia especially, it means kind of showing a symbol of newborn because they are changed to the butterfly, right? So on the grave, which is there is a person who was already dead and then buried in there, but caterpillar is walking on there, is very makes sense to me. So I was happy to find that moment. So
That's absolutely brilliant because like thinking about like thematically what your film like when I was watching it, I was thinking about the circle of life, the cycle, and it's like what a happy accident that the ant didn't work. It means that it wasn't supposed to be there. To have the caterpillar, because we all took grade 3 biology, if that were science or whatever, like the cycle of a caterpillar, and like the caterpillar cocoons and then becomes a butterfly or a moth, and then like returns back to the earth. So it's like a lovely way of juxtaposing like our lives with the lives of like a caterpillar, because like we are born, we live, and then we die, right? So it's wonderfully poetic. I guess the question I wanted to pose to all of you is, I'll start with Allison, and then if we can move to Samir and then Alice. All of your films make very interesting commentary, I would say more so Samir and Allison's, and but very interesting commentary on the precarious position of the person of color in society. I would say startlingly so in Samir's and also in Allison. And so I guess and then also in Alice's film, I think it was more subtle, but even like when there's a moment where the grandfather is not able to burn and like practice the rituals that his culture would when paying homage to a person that's died because of the cultural, I also felt like that's so sad that he can't do that because like we as a Western culture don't do that, so he's not allowed to do it. So you all make startling and like very poignant comments on POCs living in Western society. And so I guess my question is like, what did you want to say to your film, or what opinion of the world did you want to offer with your film?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, in Promise Me, I really wanted to show what systemic racism and institutionalized racism and anti-Black racism, how they collide in our institutions. And it's not always black and white. You know, we're all players in oppression. And so in my film, I was trying to make it in a way so that you can kind of place yourself and in that situation and situate yourself and see, you know, what kind of decisions you would make, or question at the same time the decisions that were being made in the film by certain people.
That was sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was saying that was like the most poignant thing for me watching your film, which was a beautiful story of the mother and the daughter like trying to cling to each other, because that's all they really either of them had in an atmosphere of like people not realizing that what they have is love and that we should fight to uphold their family as opposed to tearing it apart because we don't like as opposed to tearing it apart because like the institution sees her or deems her as unfit and like not, as you say, things are not black and white. And so I just like wanted to, I guess in a roundabout way, like highlight and thank you for letting love shine through your film.
Yeah, the irony, you would think that you would learn that in school, right? School is supposed to be a place of education a place where people are supposed to learn different things about the world, learn certain skills and all that. Yet they couldn't see the beauty and the importance of a child being there for, you know, their parent in this time when the writing is already on the wall. We see what had happened to her. We see her, the mom, in the good times, you know, how beautiful and gorgeous she was, and she still is, but you know, like in her happier days. And so you know, it just made me want to question when this real situation happened. It made me want to question, like, what are we having schools for if we can't bestow?
Of course. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm like, yes, preach. No, but it's true.
Right?
It's true, because if you're not going to learn that in school, then where are we learning it? It's like the writing is on the wall. Like, we see that, like, when you take a parent away from a child, especially if it's a child that's a marginalized individual, they're more likely to not succeed in life, perpetuating the cycle. So I just think you did a lovely job of, like, highlighting the social inequities and how the system in some ways does wreak havoc, how the system does wreak havoc on the familial structure of marginalized individuals. To segue to Samir, I guess I'm curious about what you'd like to say with your film, because I definitely think that had that little boy wearing that vest had been a white boy, people might not have reacted to him the way they did when he was on the subway platform. So I'm just curious about what you wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, you know, London's an interesting city. I moved here a couple of years ago, and it's an interesting city now because it's sort of like ground zero for, I think, you know, global fusion of culture, right? You know, you've got a truly multicultural society in a way that is different than at home and in Canada. You know, and you've got, and one of the reasons is that there's been just generations of people from all over the place kind of living here. But at the same time, you know, you've got this tension where people still feel like imposters, even in their own hometown. You know, and of course, Riz Ahmed is you know, talks a lot about this, and I wanted to sort of talk about that, you know, imposter syndrome, and find a way to dramatize that. You know, I ride the subway frequently, and I just, you know, I just look at people and watch people and just kind of, you know, stare at people. And I just, you know, it sort of struck me that people are just kind of zombies, but yet there's the underlying fear and tension that something could happen here, and something, because things do often happen here, right? That happens fairly often, that there is some sort of terror alert. And at the same time, you know, there's been a lot of, I would say, you know, people getting mistaken for terrorists, you know, not kids, but I did read an article about that, and it's just sort of the collateral damage. And I wanted to draw a line between that and a kind of family conflict, you know, and so this idea of like a family thriller and how that would work, and the mechanics of that, and can we have a family drama that then halfway through becomes a thriller? You know, what would that look like? And I watched Capernaum, you know, and I just love that movie.
Yeah.
And I just love the idea of seeing a story from this point of view, and it just kind of went from there. And also just, I mean, I have a mandate for myself, like personally, I want to tell stories about South Asian culture, but only, you know, primarily concerned with the second and third generation, you know, children of immigrants and their children, and what those tensions are, and kind of talk about identity, but not, you know, ethnic identity, more sort of traditional, you know, or Aristotelian kind of notions of identity, which is more sort of classic storytelling, but with South Asian characters, and have that skin on top of those sort of classical archetypes. So it sort of came from all that, just, you know, and just wanting to like do a story, you know, finish something, do a short, get it done, and just have a story and get it out there, and just like go through
Make
that
it.
process. Yeah, make it. Yeah.
I see Allison nodding. She's like, yes, I know that feeling well.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. That was the goal, you know?
You just want to make
Yeah.
something. And so, but when you say all those things, I do see it shining through in your film. And when you talk about identity, it's like we're so much more as POCs or than like our cult, like, and that's another thing where I feel like this movement has to move toward is like, I am more than my skin color and my heritage. I also have different intersections of my identity with society and like internally with myself. And so like, I think it's a very sophisticated approach at looking at identity because it is a boy who is seemingly like an immigrant as living with second generation South Asian people who have made London their home. So it's really poignant and it's very well done. Alice, in the last little bit, if you can let us know what you wanted to offer the world, what opinion, perspective that you wanted to offer with your film.
Well, I'm gonna briefly explain my background. So I was born and raised in Korea and studied filmmaking in Japan, and now living and making films in Canada. So I could say I was standing margin areas and observing people who have similar situations. So I can say those people could be newcomer or refugee, and or people of color in Western countries. So because of this background, I usually fascinate the moment strangers have a moment which shows possibility to be born. So I believe having these kinds of moments, I mean, if you think really carefully, you can sometimes connect it feeling with strangers, even like they are sometimes open door for you, even it's a tiny thing and there is no language, but you kind of feel like, well, we are human. So I believe this kind of short moment is a tiny miracle of ordinary life, make we have more open mind and kindness. So eventually these minds could be making the world better. So that's my sort of philosophy, I think. And I would like to offer these thoughts to the world more and more.
That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you. In closing, there's Toni Morrison is a novelist, and off of what Alice has just said, Toni Morrison is a novelist, and she talks about going to see like an art exhibit in like Sweden or something, and it's basically like two people from opposite ends in the dark trying to do this, and like what you kind of said is like trying to moments of possibility and trying to bond to find each other in the dark, which I think all three of you have done so brilliantly with your films. I am so happy to have you all here. I just wanted to thank you all. I do have to close it because I'm being told I had the last minute at 3:07. It is now 5 minutes after that. So I just wanted to say in closing, thank you all so much for being here. Allison, your film is lovely. Olenike is brilliant in it, and it really does. It's very sensitive and heavy stuff that you deal with grace. And Samir and Alice, your films are like you just move me. I'm trying to figure out a way to end this, but I could talk about it forever. So thank you, Alice. Thank you,
so
Samir.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Allison. Yeah, I guess that's it. So we're going to sign off, but stay. But thank you all for watching at home, watching our home and family shorts program. I hope you were moved because I was moved just talking to these people. And thank you for your viewership and continue to watch and enjoy. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Family and Home Shorts program with Reelworld in our 20th year. I have the director of Tesfaye. So if you please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel. I'm an Ethiopian filmmaker, now currently based in BC, Canada. Yeah, and that's about it.
Thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it, especially in these weird ass times. Pardon my French. But like, actually, I think everybody would agree these are weird ass times. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Your film, I loved it. It's a really startled. The way in which it begins is not. You really do take the audience on a journey, and it's very heartfelt for me as I watched it. And so I guess. Just starting off, how did you get the idea for the film, or how did the film come to you?
or did you know Tesfaye? I guess, yeah, that's his name. Did you know him personally? Like, can you just tell us about a bit about the story as it kind of came to be?
Sure. Well, the film was made as part of my MFA thesis program at York University. It was not the original. Yes.
Do you know Allison Duke then?
Yes.
Were you in the same year?
No,
Oh,
she's not in the
shoot.
same
Okay.
year as Allison, but yeah, I know her.
Oh, okay, cool. Because like Allison is also programmed with her film Promise Me. You guys would have been in the same talk back. Gosh darn it. Okay, sorry. Anyway, so back to your MFA. So this was your thesis film. Please, yes, please.
Yes,
Sorry.
so it was not the original film that I proposed to York University. The original film did not happen because of different political situation that was going on back in Ethiopia. So I literally stumbled upon Tesfaye at Dundas Square at a reggae concert. He tapped me from the back and he said, "You look Ethiopian." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am Ethiopian." And a relationship started there. I was regularly going to Dundas Square during the summer of 2016, I think, just to take pictures. And I used to bump into him regularly. And then we used to talk a lot about his background. And then when I realized that the original film that I wanted to make at York University was not happening, and I had known enough of his story by then, I proposed to him, "Hey, why don't I make your story into a film?" And he was like, "That's one of the main reasons why I came to Toronto." So it became a good fit.
Oh, that's so heartwarming. That's beautiful. So I guess I like you never like I'm so happy like I always start with this question because you never know how a film will come to be and like the kind of experience that you can share with viewers after like with it with just a simple, "Hey, you look like you're from Ethiopia." It's brilliant. I was really struck by the beginning in the way in which you used cinema and the images to kind of mirror Tesfaye's journey to Canada. And so that's my favorite part. But from as a director, can you talk about your process from a technical point, like where you started in pre-production or like with reference specifically to documentary filmmaking, as I know you kind of don't know the story until you know the story. So can you kind of talk about your process as a director making Tesfaye?
Sure. So like I said, the initial process started in 2016. It started off with me just regularly meeting Tesfaye and audio recording our conversations. I slowly started introducing the camera. Throughout the whole process, I tried to keep some sort of a participatory approach with Tesfaye. I definitely told, like he had clear knowledge that I would not include anything that he doesn't want included. Not that he had a problem with it. He said he gave me carte blanche to do anything, but I still wanted to make it clear to him that I definitely don't want to include any details that he doesn't want included. So throughout the original batch of recordings, like I was basically trying to develop our relationship as a documentarian and a subject for the film. So after 2 or 3 months, that's when I really started to introduce the video camera and started recording interviews. And then we started planning ahead in terms of like, I started to find out what happened to him in Madagascar and then Ethiopia and then in Nova Scotia. So it was a slow process of developing trust with the subject matter. But once that trust was developed, and I progressed into what is a format as to how I want to produce, how I want to tell the story, because it's very winding. Like he has a lot of transitionary periods in his life. And I also didn't want to pass judgment as to the different decisions that he made throughout his life. So that is partly why I wanted to pull the coffee ceremony angle into it. And throughout my creative practice, I'm always interested in incorporating traditional indigenous or African storytelling mechanisms. So that became a good fit for me because I realized living in a country like Canada, where literally most of us are immigrants, I imagine like people would have like their own stories of how they came to Canada. and introducing a coffee ceremony where the film is literally interrupted like every like 10 or 15 minutes. One was my way of making this tyrannical, if you will, way of experiencing cinema where everybody just sits in a dark room and experiences a film from A to Z continuously. I wanted to make a conscious interruption of that process and make cinema pay attention and pay homage to a traditional storytelling mechanism, which is the coffee ceremony. The coffee ceremony is quite big in Ethiopia. Coffee was discovered in Ethiopia. I don't know if many people know that.
God bless these
But
Ethiopians then.
it was from Ethiopia that it spread out to the rest of the world. And there is a ceremony that came with it that lasted for hundreds of years that traditionally Ethiopians used to come together to share and tell their common experiences. So that to me is a very alive and functioning storytelling mechanism, and I wanted to marry the two. And through the use of the coffee ceremony, I wanted to open up the story to the participants or to the viewers of the film to, one, not necessarily pass their judgments, but have their own deductions as to like the different trials and tribulations that Tesfaye had to suffer while arriving in Canada. And also it would make them reflect onto their stories of how they arrived here in Canada.
I think that's brilliant. So RE Coffee, I'm still thinking about that. Like how you've managed to marry the two, because even if you like, the way, like experientially for myself, I guess when you were speaking about bringing interrupting the film, it kind of seems a little Brechtian to me. I went to York and I studied theater, and Brecht was all about kind of like breaking the suspension of disbelief in order to force your viewer to pay attention, and not the same way as which you've explained it, but in a similar way of to actively try and change the audience's like to redirect the audience's attention. And without knowing about the coffee tradition and its relevance to Ethiopian heritage, I kind of, with like watching the images of coffee, it made me think when people come together to chat over a cup of coffee. I know that sounds silly, but I kind of just felt like when we come together to speak over a cup of coffee or what have you, and we share and chat, and like that's the feeling I got. And so in many ways, I also felt like I was meeting Tesfaye like over a cup of coffee. And so to know that it had such strong cultural reference to yourself and to Tesfaye and relevance to the film, it's just very layered and specific and intentional filmmaking that I can only applaud you for. So you're welcome.
The only thing I wanted to add here, Aisha, is we intentionally left certain details of his life blank in the film. One reason why we did that is, one, we didn't Tesfaye, there are some details he didn't want to share, and I wanted to respect that. The second was, during that interruption is when the audience members get a chance to talk amongst themselves. And I wanted that to be the occasion where they get the chance to fill in the blanks in their story, in Tesfaye's story as well. So I wanted to create some sort of an audience engagement while they're experiencing the film.
I love that, because specifically with reference, I think you arced his story very beautifully. And one of the other things that I'm not sure how intentional it was, but it had a stark similarity to Alison Duke's film, even though hers is a narrative film, like looking at how the institution and like a colonial, I wouldn't say post-colonial, not colonial, like air quotes, for we all know we're living in a colonial society, but how the institution imposes things that would break down the family structure of the immigrant, which I thought was so interesting when talking about Tesfaye, how he had had a record and then he couldn't do his job, and then from there his family life struggled, and then like I think he did a really beautiful job of like keeping certain things at bay. Like we understand that like him and his wife had parted, and it like kind of broke my heart in a way, because I had wondered like maybe if he weren't under such financial stress by a system that criminalized him for no good reason, then him and his family might have been together, or him and his wife would have been able to find a way to each other in the dark. And so I thought that even that aspect of the film was very slight, but like great filmmaking again, because you managed to layer in something through the specifics. You managed to find universality with regards to love, but also overarching things that exist in the world that we know exist, and like we're not necessarily able to place them specifically onto the story. Like we can't say his family broke up because Canada is a race, like has been built on white supremacy, but we can see where there's common ground between that idea and your story. So thank you. And the last question I'd like to ask you is, I guess it's twofold. So what is your favorite thing about the film / the directorial choice? And what, I think I surmise kind of like what I took from the film, but what did you...
And you articulated it very beautifully. I would never be able to do that, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Because of these, I'm like sweating right now. These things do make me nervous. Talking to filmmakers that I admire. So I guess the last question I would have to ask is, what is your favorite directorial choice, or your favorite thing about this film? And then like in a way, also, what did you want to say to the world, or what opinion did you want to offer the world? What opinion of the world did you want to offer with your film?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd say my favorite part is, two of my favorite parts are, one is obviously the introduction of the coffee ceremony, because as an Ethiopian, that is one of the things that I hold dear. And as an immigrant, when you get out of your country, that's when you realize the value of your culture, because all of a sudden it's absent, and all of a sudden you wake up to what the void that culture fills for you. Back in Ethiopia, the coffee ceremony was not something I would think twice about, because it was there every day. But it was only in Canada that I realized, it was actually what brought communities together. It was actually how we shared our life experiences together. And being able to incorporate that into a film that I was making was really one of the special moments for me. The second was establishing a relationship with Tesfaye, and that relationship has grown into a friendship now, where we are constantly in touch with each other. I got to meet his family back in Ethiopia. I got to meet his daughter, his ex-wife, and that relationship continues. And I've also learned a lot from his experiences, and the knowledge transfer and the wisdom transfer that happened behind the camera is much more significant than what I was able to capture on the silver screen. So those are two important things that happened during the making of the film.
Wow. Well, thank you. So it's like, I guess relationships and love conquers all. Like, it's very interesting that you say that it like it's a love of your culture, it seems, has managed to shine through. Also, forgive me, that's my telephone. The love of your culture has managed to shine through, and then also like the relationship. I think those things are truly lovely, because as you know, like making a film is difficult and taxing at times. But I feel like a lot of filmmakers stay because of the connection. So I just wanted to commend you for that. It's a brilliant film. It's beautiful. So thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate speaking with you.
Well, thank you for taking the time out, Aisha. And thank you for screening the film again at your lovely festival.
I did hit. I'm a fan. So yeah, that's all we've got for you today. Thank you so much, everyone, audiences at home, for tuning in on our chat about Tesfaye with Daniel, the film's lovely director. Yeah, I'm just jazzed to be doing this, to talk to filmmakers that I admire. And so I really do hope that the viewers at home took something from this conversation, because I surely took something from you, Daniel. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.